The hum was constant, a low, barely perceptible thrum that vibrated through the very bedrock of Earth. For 868,000 years, it had been the only sound in the deep, silent vaults, a testament to the meticulous automated systems of Project Ark. Below the desolate surface, in vast, sprawling chambers carved eons ago, billions of human beings lay in stasis, suspended between a cataclysmic past and an unknown future. Each pod was a gleaming sarcophagus of advanced technology, monitoring vitals, regulating temperature, and ensuring the deepest, most profound slumber imaginable. On the surface, Earth was a forgotten testament to time's relentless march. Mountains had crumbled, oceans had reshaped coastlines, and a perpetual twilight, born from a sky choked with dust and the lingering aftermath of ancient disasters, cast long, unchanging shadows. No living thing of significant size moved on its surface. No human structure remained standing, merely the eroded skeletons of continents. The machines, however, never slept. Millennia crawled by, marked by the slow grind of geological plates and the occasional distant hum of a meteor shower burning up in the upper atmosphere. The primary control system, Ark Prime, a colossal, self-repairing artificial intelligence, diligently managed its colossal task. It monitored energy reserves, deployed maintenance drones to patch micro-fractures in the vault walls, and patiently waited for the environmental parameters above to stabilize. Its protocols were simple, yet absolute. Preserve humanity, awaken when the planet could sustain life again, and prepare for their re-emergence. But the galaxy beyond Sol, humanity's home system, had not waited. In the vast cosmic tapestry, new civilizations had blossomed and faded, empires had risen and fallen, and star charts had been redrawn countless times. No sentient species had ever bothered to venture into the Sol system in any meaningful way. It was charted as an unremarkable, barren star, its planets devoid of intelligent life. Those few probes that did pass through dismissed Earth as a geologically stable but lifeless rock, its atmosphere too thin, its surface too cold to foster anything beyond microbial life. They had, of course, entirely missed the silent, pulsing heart of life buried miles beneath the surface. Inside the vaults, the dreams of humanity were a chaotic symphony. Some dreamed of the verdant Earth they remembered, of blue skies and warm sun. Others dreamed of the terror that had forced them into stasis, of a sky ablaze and a world tearing itself apart. Yet others dreamed of nothing at all, their minds, in a state of deep, unconscious tranquility. Time, for them, was a meaningless concept, a river flowing endlessly without current or bank. Their bodies were in perfect preservation, suspended in a delicate balance between life and inert matter, their neural pathways maintained by a constant, gentle current of energy. The deep silence of the vault was a profound thing, broken only by the occasional soft click of a diagnostic arm or the almost imperceptible hiss of a pressure regulator. The air was perfectly recycled, clean and cold, smelling faintly of ozone and ancient metals. Each stasis pod was a marvel of pre-cataclysmic engineering, a testament to humanity's desperate ingenuity. They were designed to last, to endure unimaginable stresses and temperatures, to function flawlessly for as long as necessary. And for 868,000 years they had. But even the most stable systems are subject to the slow, inexorable forces of the universe. Far below the deepest vault, the Earth's molten core continued its slow, churning dance. Tectonic plates, moving at agonizingly slow speeds over millennia, finally converged in a catastrophic embrace. A rumble began, faint at first, a distant growl that resonated through the deep rock. It grew steadily, escalating from a tremor to a vibration, then to a violent, shuddering quake that rattled the very foundations of the Ark Prime vaults. Maintenance drones were thrown from their rails, sparks flew from stressed conduits, and the calm, reassuring hum of the stasis pods wavered. Within, the Arc Prime control chamber, countless status lights flickered from green to amber, then to angry red. Warning sirens, long dormant, began to wail, a shrill, piercing cry that echoed through the vast emptiness. The central AI, a complex network of algorithms and subroutines, assessed the damage with terrifying speed, structural integrity compromised. In Sector Gamma 7, power fluctuations in life support grid beta, emergency power routing initiated. The seismic activity intensified, shaking the entire complex with a force that threatened to tear it apart. Then, with a deafening crack that reverberated through the ancient stone, a massive fissure ripped across the ceiling of the main control chamber, sending showers of rock and debris cascading down. A critical system, a fail-safe designed to activate only in the direst emergencies, was impacted. It was a rarely accessed protocol, meant for a scenario where the very stability of the planet was in question, a scenario far beyond any pre-programmed expectation. This failsafe, meant to prevent the complete collapse of Project Arc, inadvertently triggered another deeper sequence. The awakening protocol, not a gradual measured re-emergence, but an immediate, urgent, system-wide activation. The tremors continued, but now a new sound began to join the cacophony of alarms, a deep, resonant thrumming that was distinctly different from the maintenance hum. It was the sound of billions of stasis pods powering up, their ancient, dormant mechanisms whirring into life. The lights in the vast stasis chambers, previously dim and somber, began to brighten, casting long, distorted shadows across the rows of pods. Hissing sounds filled the air as seals broke, releasing the cryogenic fluids that had preserved humanity for so long. The glass-like covers of the pods began to fog, then clear, revealing the forms of men, women, and children, their faces serene in unconsciousness, now slowly stirring. Inside the minds of the sleeping, the chaotic symphony of dreams suddenly gained a conductor. Colors flared, sounds echoed, and the profound, timeless tranquility was shattered by an urgent, insistent call to consciousness. A hand twitched, an eyelid fluttered. The long slumber was ending. Humanity was waking up, and the galaxy, utterly unaware of the ancient power stirring on a forgotten world, had no idea what was coming. The initial surge of awakening was a disorienting chaos, a cacophony of alarms, groans, and the frantic, whirring sounds of ancient machinery struggling to cope with millennia of dormancy and the recent seismic shocks. Inside the Arc Prime vault, the control chamber was a scene of controlled pandemonium. Red lights pulsed, screens flickered with error messages, and the automated voice of the central AI, Arc Prime itself, crackled through the comms, its usually calm tone edged with urgency. Warning: catastrophic structural integrity breach in Sector Gamma 7, initiating emergency power reroute. Life support at 60% and dropping, critical systems failing. The voices of the first awakened humans, pale and groggy from their prolonged slumber, mingled with the mechanical warnings. Confusion reigned. Where were they? What year was it? Why was everything shaking? Among the first to fully regain consciousness was Dr. Aris Thorne, a lean, sharp-eyed man who, before the long slumber, had been a lead engineer on the Arche project. His neural implants, still functioning perfectly, flooded his mind with a torrent of information, project schematics, planetary data, and the chilling realization of the true passage of time. 868,000 years. The thought alone was staggering, a weight that threatened to crush the fragile sense of self returning to him. He stumbled from his pod, his muscles stiff, the air in the vault cold and metallic. Around him, more pods hissed open, revealing bewildered faces. Fear, raw and primal, began to spread. Status report. Thorne's voice, raspy from disuse, cut through the growing panic. He moved with an urgency born of training and the terrifying gravity of their situation. "Arc Prime, verbal report. What's our primary objective now?" The AI, its processors strained, responded with a series of clipped, technical details, a desperate plea for human intervention. The vault was compromised. Earth, their home, was a desolate, toxic shell. Survival was no longer assured. Thorne quickly identified the most critical breaches and began directing the growing number of awakened engineers and technicians. There, ancient knowledge, though centuries old, was still perfectly relevant, even crucial. They were, in essence, waking up with a complete user manual for a dying world. Hours bled into days, days into weeks. The initial focus was simply on staying alive. They repaired critical life support systems, shored up weakened sections of the vault, and re-established stable power grids. The food replicators, though limited, in their output slowly began to generate nutrient paste, a bland but vital source of sustenance. As more humans awakened, a hierarchy naturally formed, with those possessing specialized knowledge quickly rising to lead. Dr. Lena Petrova, a brilliant xenobotanist, began analyzing atmospheric samples piped in from the surface, her face grim. The air's breathable barely, but heavily contaminated. Surface temperatures are extreme, and the radiation, it's higher than projected. The reality of their situation was a harsh slap. Their rebuilt Earth was a ghost world, its once vibrant surface choked with dust and irradiated ruins. Towering skeletal structures, unrecognizable as human constructs, hinted at the scale of environmental collapse. The sky was a perpetual muted twilight, the sun a weak, distant orb. There were no thriving ecosystems, no familiar animals, only vast, desolate stretches of barren land. The sheer scale of the desolation was a psychological hammer blow. This wasn't the Earth their ancestors remembered, not even close. It was a tomb. Yet humanity's innate drive for survival, their stubborn refusal to yield, began to assert itself. They hadn't survived 868,000 years of suspended animation just to die in their own cradle. Guided by Arc Prime's vast databanks, they accessed detailed schematics for ancient technologies, advanced atmospheric scrubbers, automated mining drones, and most critically, blueprints for pre-cataclysmic starships, vessels designed for interstellar travel. These weren't crude rockets, these were sophisticated FTL, faster than light drives, capable of traversing vast cosmic distances. The irony was bitter. They had awoken on a dead world, yet possessed the means to leave it. Their engineers, working with a feverish intensity, began to reactivate the dormant fabrication plants within the deeper levels of the vault. Giant robotic arms, long still, creaked and whirred into motion, beginning the slow, deliberate process of printing and assembling components. Their goal was audacious. Not just to escape Earth, but to colonize Mars, establish orbital platforms, and eventually to venture beyond their system. The urgency was palpable. Resources within the vault were finite. Earth as it was could not sustain them long term. As the first small atmospheric processors were assembled and sent to the surface via automated cargo lifts, a new realization dawned. Arc Prime's deep space sensors, ancient but still functional, had been quietly collecting data for centuries. The Sol system was utterly devoid of significant stellar traffic. No alien probes, no signs of advanced civilizations. It was, as far as their sensors could tell, an empty, silent corner of the galaxy. This was both a relief and a profound mystery. Where was everyone? Had they been alone for all those millennia? Or, more chillingly, was there something out there that avoided this system for a reason? One day, while monitoring the Martian atmospheric readings, Dr. Thorne noticed a faint, almost imperceptible fluctuation in the background radiation. It wasn't natural, it was too regular, too precise. He cross-referenced it with Arc Prime's ancient astronomical logs. "Arc Prime," he commanded, his voice strained. "Cross-reference this energy signature with known alien propulsion types." The AI processed the request. After a moment that felt like an eternity, a single, concise response filled the control chamber. Signature consistent with low-power interstellar drive plume. Origin, Sector 7G42, approximately 2.3 light-years from Sol, uncategorized alien vessel. Detected 127 years, 3 months, and 14 days ago. Entered Sol system, performed brief survey, then departed. A single alien ship, a century ago. It had come, surveyed their dead world, and left, completely unaware of the teeming billions sleeping beneath its surface. The implications were staggering. They were not alone in the universe, not anymore. The galaxy was out there, alive, full of something. And they, humanity, were now awake. The thought sent a shiver down Thorne's spine, a mix of apprehension and fierce determination. They were a forgotten species, rising from their grave. The galaxy might be out there, but it clearly hadn't been ready for them then. And after 868,000 years, humanity, now armed with their ancient knowledge and a burning will to survive, was certainly not going to wait for permission to rejoin the cosmic stage. The silent, empty space beyond Sol suddenly felt less empty and far more full of questions. The construction of the Pathfinder, humanity's first interstellar vessel in nearly 1,000,000 years, was a marvel of accelerated engineering. Built in the depths of Earth's crust, then launched from a massive underground silo, it was a sleek, almost predatory shape, a testament to ancient human ingenuity fused with desperate modern necessity. Dr. Aris Thorne, now a lead strategist, in the newly formed Provisional Council, watched its launch from the main control center on Mars. The red planet, once a desolate sphere, now hummed with the nascent signs of human life, shimmering atmospheric processes slowly thickening. Its air, automated mining operations carving deep scars into its surface. It was a race against time. Earth was still a hostile environment, a cradle they had to leave, and the empty vastness of Sol provided no answers to their enduring questions. The Pathfinder, commanded by Captain Eva Rostova, a veteran space pilot from before the long slumber, slipped silently past Jupiter's gas giant, its FTL drives spooling up with an almost imperceptible hum. Their mission was clear: explore, observe, and if possible, make contact. The ancient alien energy signature detected by Arc Prime, the one that had briefly visited Sol a century ago, became their first destination. It was a leap of faith, a blind dive into the unknown, but humanity had nothing left to lose. Days blurred into weeks as the Pathfinder cut through the void, its advanced sensors sweeping the surrounding star systems. The silence of space was profound, almost oppressive, broken only by the hum of the ship's engines and the low murmur of the crew. Each new star they catalogued, each distant nebula they passed, was a fresh mystery. Then, the first true anomaly. A faint, repeated signal, far beyond the reach of Sol's ancient senses. It wasn't the signature they were looking for, but it was undeniably artificial, a rhythmic pulse of energy that spoke of intelligence. Captain Rostova ordered a change of course. Suspense crackled on the bridge. Was this it? After millennia, were they finally about to meet something other than their own reflections? The signal grew stronger, resolving into a complex, almost melodic pattern. It was a beacon, a greeting, or perhaps a warning. They cautiously approached the source, a vibrant blue star on the outer fringes of a dense star cluster. What they found defied all expectations. Not a grand, sprawling empire, but a single orbital station, a patchwork of gleaming alloys and strange, iridescent materials. It orbited a temperate, Earth-like world, but the planet itself seemed surprisingly underdeveloped, its surface marked by simple, organized settlements, not towering cities. As the Pathfinder drew closer, a smaller vessel, sleek and angular, detached from the station and approached them. It was a Xylos ship, as they would later learn. Its hull was a vibrant green, adorned with intricate golden spirals. There was no aggression in its posture, only a curious, almost timid approach. First contact was tentative, fraught with an unspoken tension. The Xylos, a species of delicate, multi-limbed beings with large, expressive eyes, communicated through a series of complex light patterns and high-frequency chirps. Arc Prime's universal translator, a relic of pre-slumber galactic studies, struggled at first, but slowly, painstakingly, began to decipher their language. The Xylos were traders, peaceful merchants who navigated the galaxy's fringes, avoiding the major powers. Their primary concern was commerce and maintaining strict neutrality. They were utterly astounded by humanity's sudden appearance, particularly by the Pathfinder's advanced, almost unheard-of FTL capabilities. You emerged from a system marked barren, one Xylos elder, its light patterns flickering with confusion, conveyed through the translator. Your technology, it is beyond our current understanding. Where have you been? The explanation of the long slumber was met with bewildered awe. The concept of an entire species putting itself to sleep for nearly 1,000,000 years was unfathomable to the Xylos. They viewed humanity as an anomaly, a disruption. To the established galactic order, almost a ghost suddenly manifest. They quickly provided humanity with what they called the Galactic Census, a comprehensive map of known space detailing the major empires, their territories, and their complex web of alliances and ancient treaties. It was a thick, digital tome of information, filled with data on species, economies, political structures, and most importantly, warnings. The census was a revelation. The galaxy was not a wild, untamed frontier, but a meticulously organized bureaucratic entity. The dominant power was the Vorlag hegemony, a vast, militaristic empire that controlled a significant portion of the inner rim. Their expansion was slow but inexorable, their power built on overwhelming numbers and strict adherence to protocol. There were also the enigmatic Lumarians, beings of pure energy who maintained an ancient isolationist stance, and the Techno-Synod, a collective of highly advanced machine intelligences that policed technological development. The Xylos stressed, repeatedly, the importance of galactic borders, approved expansion zones, and recognized diplomatic channels. They spoke of ancient conflicts, of civilizations crushed for defying the established norms. The clear implication was humanity was new, humanity was powerful, and humanity was an unknown variable that could upset the delicate galactic balance. Captain Rostova and Dr. Thorne pored over the census data, their faces growing grim. The galaxy they had awoken into was not a welcoming place. It was old, set in its ways, and deeply suspicious of anything new or unpredictable. Their rapid re-emergence, their advanced technology, and their utter lack of any galactic history made them a wild card. The Xylos warned them repeatedly about the Vorlag, describing their ruthless efficiency and their absolute intolerance for unsanctioned expansion. To expand without permission, to claim territory not explicitly marked as available, was an act of war. The Xylos were terrified that humanity's mere presence would draw unwanted attention to their neutral trading posts. They pleaded with humanity to proceed with caution, to declare themselves to the galactic authorities to integrate slowly, But humanity, having just survived 868,000 years of slumber and the near death of their homeworld, possessed a fierce, almost defiant independence. Their ancestors had faced existential threats and carved their own path. They weren't about to ask for permission to exist in a galaxy that didn't even know they were there until recently. "They're rigid," Dr. Thorne observed, his eyes scanning. "The intricate political maps, bound by rules and traditions, that could be their weakness or our undoing." Captain Rostova nodded, her gaze fixed on the vast, uncharted territories beyond the Vorlag hegemony's borders. "We need resources. We need space to breathe, and we certainly won't ask for permission to find it." The uneasy alliance with the Xylos, a species that feared change, highlighted the stark difference in philosophies. Humanity, forged in the crucible of near extinction, was a force of dynamic change. The galaxy, so stagnant and set in its ways, was about to be shaken. The first tremor had just begun. The Xylos could only watch, their iridescent lights dimming with apprehension as the Pathfinder, a ghost ship from a forgotten past, turned its prow towards the vast, forbidden reaches of galactic space. The decision to disregard the Xylos' warnings was not made lightly, but it was made firmly. On the nascent Martian Council, housed in a cavernous, repurposed lava tube, Dr. Aris Thorne addressed the grim faces of his colleagues. "We cannot ask for permission to live," he stated, his voice echoing in the vast chamber. "We have awakened to a galaxy that forgot us. Our survival depends on rapid expansion, on securing resources and habitable space, not on navigating archaic galactic bureaucracy." Captain Ava Rostova, newly appointed head of the nascent human fleet, nodded in agreement. "The Pathfinder proved our FTL drives are superior. We can outmaneuver any border patrol they might have." The fear was still present, a cold knot in the stomach of every human, but it was overshadowed by an almost desperate resolve. They were a species rising from the ashes, and they would not be confined. Their expansion began with astonishing speed. Using their advanced FTL technology, humanity jumped to nearby star systems previously designated as unclaimed by the Xylos census, but which the Vorlag hegemony considered within their sphere of influence. These systems often contained barren, rocky planets or gas giants, but to humanity they were canvases. Automated terraforming drones, deployed in swarms, descended upon these worlds. Within weeks, the dust-choked atmospheres began to clear, replaced by a thin, breathable mix of gases. Microorganisms engineered for rapid growth seeded the soil, turning vast stretches of lifeless rock into a nascent green. Cities, modular and self-assembling, rose from the ground overnight, their gleaming alloys reflecting the light of newly colonized suns. Humanity was not just expanding, they were transforming the galaxy, reshaping it to their needs with a breathtaking speed that defied conventional galactic understanding. The first official notice from the Vorlag hegemony arrived exactly 3 months after the initial wave of colonization. It was a cold, formal communiqué translated flawlessly by Arc Prime. It spoke of trespass, violation of established galactic treaties, and unauthorized resource appropriation. It demanded an immediate cessation of all expansion and a formal declaration of humanity's intentions. Captain Rostova simply filed it. They were too busy. Every available human, every reactivated drone was focused on growth. They needed more metals, more water, more processing power. The memory of Earth's desolation fueled their relentless drive. They would not be caught unprepared again. The Vorlag, a species of large armored bipeds with a rigid caste system and a deep-seated pride in their ancient heritage, did not tolerate defiance. Their second message was an ultimatum. Cease all unsanctioned activities within hegemony space within 5 cycles, or face immediate subjugation. Your nascent presence is a blight upon the established order. This time, the message was accompanied by high-resolution images of Vorlag warships, their massive angular hulls bristling with heavy weaponry. They were designed for intimidation, for overwhelming force, for crushing any resistance under sheer numbers. The Xylos, upon hearing of the ultimatum, sent frantic, panicked warnings. The Vorlag do not bluff. They crush all who defy them. Plead your case. Surrender. It is the only way. But surrender was not in humanity's recently reawakened vocabulary. Dr. Thorne, examining the Vorlag ship schematics provided by Arc Prime, noticed something crucial. Their designs, while powerful, were remarkably conventional. They relied on brute force, on linear attacks, on established combat doctrines refined over millennia. They were predictable. "They fight by the book," he mused, a dangerous glint in his eye. Their book. This was a galaxy accustomed to slow, deliberate power plays, not the chaotic improvisational energy of a species that had nearly gone extinct. The Provisional Council held an emergency session. The decision was unanimous. They would not cease. They would not be subjugated. Instead, they would prepare. Humanity redirected its furious building efforts from colonization to defense. New, smaller shipyards, hidden deep within asteroid belts and carved into the moons of gas giants, began to churn out a different kind of vessel. Not the massive, lumbering warships of the Vorlag, but sleek, agile fighters, heavily armed frigates, and most importantly, experimental support vessels, equipped with technologies the Vorlag wouldn't even understand. They weren't building for a fair fight. They were building for a desperate asymmetric one. The Vorlag hegemony, confident in their numerical superiority and the galactic perception of their invincibility, dispatched a punitive fleet. It was not their full might, but a significant force, intended to swiftly dismantle human infrastructure and send a clear message to any other upstarts. Their fleet was massive, a dark cloud blotting out stars as it progressed through the void. Towards the human-claimed systems, sensors picked up their approach weeks in advance. The tension across humanity's fledgling colonies was almost unbearable. They had rebuilt so much, so fast, but they were still fragile. Could they truly stand against such an ancient, powerful enemy? The Vorlag flagship, the Iron Hammer, under the command of General Krath, a veteran of countless subjugation campaigns, led the vanguard. Krath scoffed at the human response, or lack thereof. No formal surrender, no diplomatic envoys, just silence. He interpreted it as either arrogance or naive ignorance. "They do not understand the hegemony's might," he rumbled to his tactical officer, his armored hand resting on a holographic map of the contested systems. "They will learn their place." He ordered his fleet to assume standard invasion formation, preparing to bombard the outermost human colony world, a newly terraformed planet designated New Dawn. But as the Vorlag fleet entered the New Dawn system, something was wrong. Their long-range scanners, typically infallible, flickered erratically. What they expected to see, static, fixed defenses, was replaced by a confusing blur of rapidly changing energy signatures. Small, almost undetectable vessels darted. Through the void, their movements erratic and unpredictable. Then the impossible happened. A Vorlag scout ship, far ahead of the main fleet, suddenly twisted violently, its hull buckling inward before exploding into a shower of debris. There was no incoming fire, no clear weapon signature. General Krath roared for explanations, but his tactical officers could only shake their heads in bewildered confusion. The sensors were overwhelmed. The humans, it seemed, had not just ignored the ultimatum. They had prepared a reception the galaxy had never seen. The long slumber had ended, and humanity was about to show the universe just how unready it was. The first true test of their resurgence was upon them, and the fate of their newfound civilization hung precariously in the balance. General Krath, commander of the Vorlag punitive fleet, felt a cold dread trickle down his armored spine. His vast armada, built for overwhelming force and predictable victory, was experiencing something unprecedented: chaos. The human-controlled system of New Dawn, previously considered a soft target, was a swirling vortex of baffling energy signatures and vanishing targets. His tactical display, usually a clear visualization of enemy positions, now pulsed with indecipherable data. Scout ships sent to reconnoiter were simply gone, not destroyed in a blaze of glory, but vanished, leaving behind only distorted sensor echoes. "What in the stars is happening?" Krath bellowed, his multiple eyes scanning the frantic faces of his bridge crew. "Where are they? How are they doing this?" Below, on the surface of New Dawn, Captain Eva Rostova watched the main view screen from her command bunker, a network of integrated command centers buried deep beneath the planet's rapidly greening surface. The Vorlag fleet, massive and imposing, was a terrifying sight, but she knew their weakness: predictability, humanity's entire defensive strategy, developed by Dr. Aris Thorne and refined by countless hours of simulation on Arc Prime's enhanced processors, revolved around exploiting that very predictability. "Execute Phase 1, Rostova ordered, her voice calm amidst the rising tension. "Initiate spatial distortion fields. Target Vorlag comms frequencies." The Vorlag fleet found itself caught in a nightmare. Not a direct attack, but a systematic unraveling of their tactical cohesion. Their long-range sensors, designed to cut through stellar dust and solar flares, were now returning garbled nonsense, filled with phantom signals and impossible readings. Communication between their own ships became fragmented, riddled with static and delay. Then came the kinetic siphons, small, agile human frigates, seemingly appearing from nowhere thanks to their cloaking technology and advanced warp drives, latched onto Vorlag cruisers. These were not direct weapons, but highly specialized energy collectors. They didn't fire destructive beams. Instead, they drained the Vorlag ship's power cores, leaving them sputtering and vulnerable, like vast, beached whales. General Krath watched in horror as one of his capital ships, the Indomitable, a vessel capable of glassing a continent, simply lost power. Its lights died, its weapon systems went dark, and it drifted helplessly in the void, a sitting target. Moments later, a swarm of human strike craft, incredibly fast and impossibly maneuverable, swarmed the crippled behemoth. These weren't the direct firefighters the Vorlag were used to. They darted and weaved, their weapons not explosive projectiles, but focused plasma cutters that sliced through the Indomitable's armor plates with chilling precision. They weren't trying to blow it up. They were systematically dissecting it, turning it into scrap. The Vorlag, reliant on massive, slow-moving projectiles and energy shields, found their targeting systems utterly unable to lock onto the tiny, erratic human craft. "They're not fighting fair," a Vorlag officer shrieked, a concept that was utterly alien to their martial philosophy. For the Vorlag, war was a grand, predictable chess match. Humanity, however, was playing an entirely different game. Their smaller, faster ships zipped between the lumbering Vorlag cruisers, using the larger vessels as cover, their movements defying all known combat logic. The spatial distortion fields, generated by ground-based emitters on New Dawn and by specialized human support vessels, created pockets of anomalous space, causing Vorlag navigation systems to malfunction, sending their ships veering off course, sometimes even colliding with their own allies. General Krath ordered a full tactical retreat, but even that was impossible. The siphons continued their relentless work, draining power from escape drives and weapon systems. The human craft, like persistent venomous insects, harried their every move. The Vorlag's overwhelming numbers, once their greatest strength, became a liability as their ships clustered together, becoming easier targets for the siphons and plasma cutters. The battle was less a glorious confrontation and more a systematic, horrifying dismantling. No grand explosions, no epic charges, just the relentless, cold efficiency of a predator dissecting its prey. Back on Mars, Dr. Thorne watched the real-time combat feed with a grim satisfaction. They rely on brute force and a strict adherence to doctrine, he explained to the Provisional Council, his eyes never leaving the screen. We studied their history. Their last major war was against the Cathar centuries ago, a war of attrition. They never adapted beyond that. We did. Humanity had spent their long slumber not just preserving their bodies, but also their knowledge. And in their libraries were not just blueprints for FTL drives, but ancient texts on strategy, on psychology, on how to fight against overwhelming odds. They knew that sometimes the most effective weapon wasn't the biggest gun, but the most unexpected move. The true genius of the human strategy lay in its non-lethal but crippling approach. They weren't trying to wipe out the Vorlag fleet. They were trying to break it, to incapacitate it, to send a message so profoundly unsettling that the hegemony would never forget it. The kinetic siphons were designed not to destroy, but to disable. The plasma cutters were used to sever command bridges, disable engines, and cut through life support, not to detonate reactors. This created a profound psychological shock for the Vorlag. They were not just losing, they were being humiliated. Their grand, powerful ships were being rendered helpless, not by superior firepower, but by a baffling, almost surgical precision. As the battle raged, the Vorlag ships, stripped of power and control, began to fall into New Dawn's gravity well, burning up in the atmosphere or crashing onto the planet's surface in fiery spectacles. General Krath's flagship, the Iron Hammer, was one of the last to succumb. Its shields flickered, then died, its engines sputtered, and its massive frame began to drift uncontrollably. Human strike craft danced around it, not firing directly, but subtly guiding it, like sheepdogs herding a giant, helpless beast. Krath watched, his pride shattered, as his once mighty vessel was slowly, deliberately herded toward the barren moon of New Dawn. There it crashed, not in a grand explosion, but with a sickening crunch of metal on rock, a testament to its utter defeat. The remnants of the Vorlag fleet, a mere fraction of their original force, broke formation and fled, their communication channels alight with panicked, incoherent reports. They had encountered something utterly alien to their understanding of warfare. Humanity had not fought with bigger guns or more ships. They had fought with ingenuity, with adaptability, and with a ruthless understanding of their enemy's limitations. The galaxy had expected a conventional confrontation, a predictable display of power. Instead, it had received a sharp, shocking glimpse of humanity's newfound, unconventional might. The first glimmer had indeed been seen, and the ripple it sent across galactic space would soon become a tidal wave. The silent, ancient galaxy was about to learn that humanity, after centuries of slumber, was wide awake and ready to redefine the rules of engagement. The Vorlag fleet's retreat was not just a military defeat. It was a psychological collapse that rippled across the galactic network like a shockwave. Reports from the few surviving Vorlag vessels were incoherent, filled with panicked descriptions of ghost ships, impossible maneuvers, and weapons that steal power. General Krath, rescued by a desperate extraction team, was a broken figure, his once unshakable confidence shattered. He spoke only of the humans, a species that defied all known military doctrine, a force that fought with cunning and unseen technologies rather than brute strength. The mighty Vorlag hegemony, accustomed to swift, overwhelming victories, had been humiliated, not by a superior armada, but by an upstart species wielding an unfamiliar brand of warfare. On New Dawn, Captain Eva Rostova surveyed the wreckage of the Vorlag fleet, Not grand, burning explosions, but silent drifting hulks, their systems inert, their crews either captured or simply abandoned. It was a stark message. Humanity was not here to conquer in the traditional sense, but to assert its right to exist, and to show the galaxy that the old rules no longer applied. Dr. Aris Thorne, standing beside her, felt a surge of pride, mixed with a deep sense of trepidation. "The galaxy is watching," he murmured, his gaze fixed on the stars, "and they don't know what to make of us." Indeed, the galactic powers reacted with a mix of disbelief, fear, and cautious curiosity. The Xylos, their original contact, were now torn between relief at humanity's survival and profound terror at the consequences of their defiance. Their trading posts buzzed with whispers and frantic data transfers. The Techno-Synod, a collective of ancient analytical machine intelligences that typically remained aloof, dispatched automated probes towards the Sol system, their programming overridden by an urgent need to understand humanity's unique technological signatures. The Lumarians, beings of pure energy who rarely interacted with lesser species, felt a ripple of disturbance through their ancient, ethereal networks. Something new had emerged, something unpredictable, and it had fractured the long-established galactic order. The Vorlag, reeling from their unprecedented defeat, did not immediately retaliate. Their military strategists were scrambling, trying to reevaluate their entire combat philosophy. How do you fight an enemy that doesn't play by your rules? An enemy that can turn your own power against you? Their rigid hierarchical command structure, once a strength, now became a liability, slow to adapt to such a dynamic threat. Other lesser species, long subjugated by the Vorlag, watched humanity with a newfound silent hope. Could this be the turning point? Could this strange new species challenge the hegemony's iron grip? Humanity, however, did not rest on its laurels. Their expansion continued, now with an even greater urgency. They established new colonies, not just for resources, but for strategic outposts, creating a network of defended systems. They perfected their spatial distortion technology, turning entire star systems into labyrinthine traps for any unwary invader. They refined their kinetic siphons, making them even more efficient at draining energy from larger vessels. And they began to develop entirely new forms of defense, concepts so alien to galactic warfare that no other species had ever conceived of them. Their resilience, born from millennia of slumber and the desperate fight for survival, made them terrifyingly adaptable. The galactic powers began to send diplomatic envoys, not to issue ultimatums, but to cautiously probe. The Cathar Dominion, a brutal empire known for its rapid conquests, approached with a calculating caution. They had heard tales of the Vorlag's defeat and their own military doctrines, while aggressive favored efficiency. They sent their most cunning diplomats, not their fleets, to try and understand this new force. Humanity, still wary, met them with a measured, pragmatic approach. They weren't looking for war, but they wouldn't shy away from it either. They communicated their simple demands: the right to exist, the right to expand, and the right to self-determination. They would not be governed by ancient treaties they had no part in forming. The galaxy, in essence, was forced to confront a reality it had avoided for nearly 1,000,000 years: the re-emergence of humanity. They weren't a nascent, struggling species in need of guidance or protection. They were a technologically advanced, fiercely independent power, forged in the fires of near extinction, with a unique perspective on survival. They didn't seek to dominate, but they wouldn't be dominated. Their methods were unorthodox, their technology often baffling, and their sheer audacity was unparalleled. The Vorlag, in a desperate attempt to regain face, eventually launched a second, larger fleet. But this time, humanity was ready. The battle was even more decisive. The Vorlag's attempts to counter the kinetic siphons and spatial distortions were clumsy, easily circumvented by humanity's agile tactics. The Vorlag flagship was not just crippled, it was boarded by human marines, an act of sheer audacity that sent shivers down the spines of military leaders across the galaxy. General Krath, watching from a secure location, could only stare at the live feeds of his ships falling apart, realizing the profound miscalculation his hegemony had made. The Galactic Council, a loose confederation of the major powers, finally convened an emergency session, their holographic projections filled with nervous and bewildered faces. The agenda was singular: the human problem. They spoke of their rapid colonization, their unorthodox military victories, and their utter disregard for galactic law. But beneath the fear was a dawning realization. Humanity was not just a threat. It was a phenomenon. It was a species that had adapted, innovated, and fought its way back from the brink of oblivion, and in doing so had developed a unique form of strength that the rigid, predictable galaxy was simply not equipped to handle. The galaxy, set in its ways for nearly 1,000,000 years, was no longer stable. The arrival of humanity had introduced a wild card, a catalyst for change. Their very existence challenged the old order, forcing empires to re-evaluate their strategies, their technologies, and their very understanding of warfare. The silence of Sul had been broken, and the echoes of humanity's awakening resonated throughout the cosmos. The galaxy wasn't just unprepared for them, it was utterly shaken, forced to reckon with a new power that played by its own rules, a power that had woken up and was now ready to claim its place among the stars. The age of humanity's resurgence had truly begun, and the universe would never be the same.